you might want to watch that. Okay, I want to give you another example. So Christy Lee and Jonathan Mark Littleton, another very interesting couple. Again, look at the picture, think about whether you've heard anything about them. What happened to this couple, when, and where? What happened, when, and where? Okay, it was in 1999 in Texas in the USA. And after her husband's death, Christy Lee Littleton brought a medical malpractice suit because of how her husband died. But the doctor's defense attorney argued, and argued successfully, that the marriage was invalid because Christine Less was a male, and therefore she could not bring an action as his surviving spouse. So her rights to bring action in the case of potential medical malpractice was thrown out. And here's a third couple I want to introduce you to, Celia Kitziger and Sue Wilkinson. Well, you might not be surprised to hear that these are part of my own family. Celia is my sister and Sue is my sister-in-law. What happened to this couple, where and when? And why are they posing, showing their wedding rings over their garden gate? So what happened to Celia Kitziger and Sue Wilkinson, when and where? Well, they were married in Vancouver in Canada, where they were working at the time. And when they came back to the UK, they found that the UK refused to recognise their marriage. So although they were legally married in Canada, the UK refused to recognise them as married. And they brought a legal case in 2006, which they lost. They had to pay costs. There was some fairly offensive media coverage and indeed some fairly offensive comments in the court. And their marriage was not recognised and they had to pay costs. Now that changed more recently. In 2014, their marriage was recognised by the government as a legal marriage. And that's because the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act 2013 came into force. So they were kind of married, then they were unmarried when they came back to the UK, and then they were married again. I always say to them they should have had lots of honeymoons and lots of engagement parties. So what you found in 2014 was a lot of happy couples, and here's Celia and Sue again, gay couple who wed overseas, celebrating UK as same-sex marriage laws arrive. And you've seen other developments like lesbian couple become the first same-sex couple to sign joint birth certificates. So birth comes in there as well, through the lens of recognition or not of women's relationship with other women or men's relationship with other men. So that again nicely flips to link from marriage to some of the issues around birth. So I want to move on to look at the another topic, and then I'll start linking them back together again. So we're going to talk about death. So here's Tony Nicklinson. Have a look at the picture. You may remember his name. You may have seen images of him in the media. See if there are any clues in the picture. And I'm going to ask my usual question, which is what happened. And in this case, he was a right to die activist. And you see him here with his wife Jane and his daughters Beth and Lauren, who became activists alongside him. He was somebody who, in middle age, became locked in. He had locked-in syndrome. So locked-in syndrome is when you don't have brain damage. Your brain is completely functioning, your memory functions, your intellect is functioning, your joined up thinking functions. So it's not technically a form of brain damage. It's about damage that disconnects your brain from the rest of your body. So it becomes a very severe form of physical disability, where you are locked in a frozen body. But you can often use your eyes, as long as the injury is not too high up. You can blink and you can use eye gaze. So with the right technological support, you can communicate effectively. And I have to say, and it's important to recognize that many people who are locked in have good quality of life and are happy to continue, and actually feel that the very public profile of people with locked-in syndrome who want to die is quite a negative image and is problematic from their point of view. So I think it's absolutely important there to recognize some of the disability rights debates here, which we will also be looping back into. He eventually died in 2012. He lost his battle to actually have help to die. So in the end, what he did was he wrote an advance decision to refuse any intervention should he get pneumonia or whatever, and then he stopped eating and drinking, and he died in 2012. And I'll store these PowerPoint slides so that if you want to follow this up, you can click on things like the BBC News report here. So you can see here, I've got a live link with that colour where you can click straight through to read more about him. And also his daughter Lauren's account, My Dad, My Hero, which is well worth reading. They're an extraordinarily interesting family. Another family, an individual I want to introduce you to is Paul Briggs. Now, this is an iconic image that appeared in the media of him as a road traffic cop. And again, I'm wondering if it rings any bells. What happened to him? Have you got any memory? Well, this was a very famous court case, the Paul Briggs case. And for those of you who are on Twitter, and this is another useful source of debate, so I do encourage you, if you're not on Twitter, at least to get an account where you can lurk, because we're going to be talking about social media as well as mainstream media in this course. If you want to find out more about Paul Briggs, one hashtag that's key to his case is hashtag #CopBriggs. COP there stands for Court of Protection, which is the court that dealt with his case. So Paul Briggs was a traffic cop, and he attended a lot of road traffic accidents, and he talked a lot to his wife and to his colleagues, saying, if I'm ever in a devastating road traffic accident where I have severe brain damage, I don't want to live like that. I want to live as a certain kind of person who can be a father and a husband in a certain kind of way, and who can work in a certain way. And I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my days in a care home, unable to make my own decisions with severe brain injury. And he actually went into a coma, but then emerged into something called a minimally conscious state. So minimally conscious means you've got severe brain injury, but you're not completely unconscious. You do have some minimal and intermittent awareness. And his wife fought to stop life-prolonging treatment for him, to allow him to die. And his clinicians and the medical team who looked after him didn't want to do this, and it ended up in the Court of Protection. And in fact, the judge ruled that there was strong evidence that Paul Briggs would not want to be sustained in his condition, and the feeding tube was withdrawn, and he was allowed to die. So these sorts of issues, and I've already hinted at it with the example of a lesbian couple jointly adopting a baby, issues around birth, marriage, death, citizenship, parental rights, sexuality, identity, these are all in a really interesting kind of web of interconnectivity. And birth, marriage, and death connect through some of the stories we're going to be looking at. And I just want to give you a flavour of a couple of those next. So death and marriage. This is, if you look at the picture on the right, That is a picture of a bride and groom getting married. It's a posthumous marriage, a marriage after death. So Christelle de Michael's fiance had died in a motorcycle accident, but she was able to marry him after death. And this is an interesting feature of French law, permitted by the 1959 Code, Civil Article 171. And in seminars, we can discuss how did that come about, but I think it's a very interesting, sad, poignant wedding photograph. And I guess one has to think about, why do some countries allow posthumous marriage? And what does it mean for society? And does it disrupt our understandings of what marriage is? The birth and death connection can also be pulled through as we look at cases.